Welcome to the first of our new life group discussion videos. We're so glad you could join us wherever it is that you're watching from, whether you're at home, on your own, whether you're in a life group gathering with other people, whether you're watching this whilst you're cooking your tea at home and you're going to discuss with your group later. Doesn't matter, we're just glad that you are here. And we're gathered with some incredible people. I've got Pastors Ed, Amy, and Sophie. And our discussion today is going to be based around our Vision Month theme of scattered. All month in September, we've been looking at this idea of scattered, about how we find God's purposes in our everyday life. So we're going to talk about some things that I hope is helpful to you. I hope to encourage you and also empower you to be able to make a difference in your world. And then we're going to finish with some questions afterwards that you can discuss either right now or later on with your life group. So I'm going to come back to, I want to start with some statistics that Gail shared as part of her message back in September about why people came to church. So I don't know where the study was from, but it wasn't made up. These are honest, real statistics. And the question was this: why, where they interviewed a load of people, I think it was thousands of people in the church, I believe in America. How did you come to church? And the percentages were as this: 2% people said they came through advertising, 6% came through pastoral invitation, so I guess that's one of us as official pastoral people, inviting them to church. Another 6% came through organized evangelistic events. So for us, I think we're talking Christmas, Easter, delight events, whatever that might be. And 86% came through a friend or a relative.
Wow.
And then they asked the same people if they had ever invited somebody to church, and 2% said yes, they had invited somebody to church. So 86% of those asked came to church through a friend or a relative. My question to us is this: does that surprise you, depress you, encourage you, inspire you, or something else completely?
Wow.
Who wants to start us?
Yeah, well, for me, I guess it definitely surprises me, first of all, that it's such a high number, the 86%. But I guess it encourages me in one sense of thinking, well, wow, if the church really got behind this and we actually did our bit and, you know, invited people, then it's easy, because 86% of people come because we invite them. The 2% that have done it is that's quite depressing to hear, but it encourages me to think, right, well, if we grabbed this idea and we actually went for it, then yeah, wow, how full could our churches be?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, the 2% is slightly depressing, but if you flip it, then there's a 98% possibility, an opportunity for us to then go and do something for improvement. 98% chance of improvement, which is good. And I would like to think if this was a influence church study, then our statistics would already be better.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that 86% is probably reflective of us across all our locations. Probably. What about you, Ems?
I think my reflection on that would be, initially when I heard it, I felt quite daunted, because if 86% of people come through a friend or a relative, you know, that's the seemingly most effective way to get someone to come. You know, we've got all these different avenues of people coming, and that's the one that seems to, you know, like be outstanding relative to those. So I felt a bit daunted in the sense of kind of, oh wow, if friends and relatives aren't inviting people, you know, and I'm a friend and I'm a relative, if I'm not doing that enough, is that going to jeopardize people's chances of coming to church? But I guess then we have to be reminded that, you know, our job is to scatter, and our job is to invite and to present Jesus to people, present the gospel to people, and you know, the weight of their response and their salvation is not on our shoulders. You know, God is the one who takes hearts of stone and turns them to flesh. Our job is just to scatter, and he'll water those seeds.
So good.
So I was daunted initially, and then reminded of God's faithfulness and the fact that he is in control and he builds his church.
Yeah, that's right. And I think all we have to do, to kind of half quote what you just said, there's a scripture where the Apostle Paul says, I planted a seed, Apollos watered it, but only God makes it grow. So we always know that only God brings salvation. Salvation isn't on our shoulders. Making it grow, making it increase is on our shoulders, but that doesn't relieve us of the role that we do play of we're still going to plant a seed and water. We've still got to take the opportunity to do it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, good. We didn't hear from you, Ed, but we're going to move on to the second question. I hope you're not too offended.
No, definitely not.
That's good. Okay, have you guys, if we're talking about sharing our faith, talking about being scattered to make a difference, what are our stories of sharing faith? When has it worked? What are your tips? How is it hard? Why don't you start us on that then?
Yeah, I think for me, I think my tip would be it can't just be in what you say. It has to be in who you are.
Yep.
And sometimes it's a slow burner. It really is. I've been working with a guy for the last couple of years, not as within my job as location pastor, but in my job.
Dan Kelland.
Yeah, Dan Kelland. But no, it's my job as a plasterer. I've had a guy working alongside me, knows I'm a Christian. He's in some ways interested, always asks me how was church, always asks me, what have you been up to, how's things with the young people? But when it comes to, you should come along, he's like, yeah. And then,
Right.
but there's enough interest and enough respect that you think, well, you never know what's going to happen in the scale of life. And he knows where I'm at, he knows where I stand for. But with that said, I need to make sure that being in charge of that business, that I'm representing my Christian faith, not just to him as someone who's working for me, but actually to the customers,
Right.
to the people, the builders, merchants, to everyone, because otherwise he's going to start to see holes and think, well, hang on, you're saying one thing here, but then I don't know, skimping on this or cheating on this or whatever. So I think that consistent being yourself makes a huge impact on people, because they know that it's not a phase for you. They know that you're not just a man of big words, but actually you're someone who can be depended on. So that would be my encouragement to people.
Yeah, because if it's only just Sunday and doesn't affect you Monday to Saturday,
it's pointless, really.
Well, it's going to be true for you on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And that's great. It's going to change your life. But you're not going to make a difference for the kingdom of God with the world around you if it's just, there's Ed, who he is on a Sunday.
Yeah. No, there has to be consistency.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
One of you guys?
Yeah, I think I guess I come from a non-Christian family, so my kind of experience of sharing faith has been a little bit different in that sense. I became a Christian when I was 17, so kind of sharing faith isn't something I've got really, really good at because I haven't done it for a particularly long time. But I remember when I first became a Christian being so excited about Jesus, and I still am, but I guess it kind of like it overflows in different ways at that time, doesn't it? And I remember sort of sharing with my family and asking them, can I get baptized and things like this, and was just gushing about God. And I remember being met with a response that was very much, you're 18, you're trying to find your identity, maybe just wait a bit because you might be a different faith next year. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, if you knew the God that I met, you would just know how ridiculous that suggestion is.
Yeah.
And it was like such a painful thing to hear at the time, because it's the thing that you're most excited about has literally just been like squashed.
That's tough.
Yeah, but now, 7, 8 years on, I'm able to talk about my faith with my family in a totally different way. And they're not Christians yet. I'm still believing for that. But I think they know that Jesus is here to stay. So I guess my kind of encouragement would be, for stories of sharing your faith, if you're finding that it's a bit difficult to get an inroad at the moment, just like keep sowing seeds, because things shift and people's hearts change over time, and God can do that and will do that. We have to intercede in prayer for those people and persist.
That's really good. Yeah, because I think sometimes we want whatever fruit, of somebody coming to church or somebody becoming a Christian, but we want it in our timing of, but I had the guts and I invited them to church and they didn't become a Christian on day one, but there's a far bigger picture that God sees, that we can't see. All we've got to be doing is faithful in that.
Absolutely.
And not just doing it once and thinking, it didn't work, I'll stop. But finding, through like what you were saying, Ed, not maybe every conversation. So I come to church, I come in, but faithful in being an example of God. Because that will stir something.
Yeah.
Speaks volumes isn't it?
Yeah, massively.
Yeah, that's it. Like I've got a group of friends that I've been friends with since school. And so, we've been friends for 20 years. So basically for 20 years, on and off, I've been inviting them to church. And out of the three that I'm particularly thinking of, one did come to church for a little bit. Sadly, she's drifted away again now. The other two have come for, weddings and kids' dedications and those sorts of things. But, are like, no, it's not for me. But like what Ed's saying, just, me being at Witness, I don't ask every week, I don't ask every time we see them, but I just continue living out my life, and they always ask about church, and like when it is Christmas and special things like that, I always do the invitation again. But the interesting thing is that, they always turn to me when they want prayer or something like that, which is like massive. So that's it. We just don't know what God's doing, do we, behind the scenes, and so we can't be discouraged. And, I've had 20 years of witnessing to the same people and not seen them come to church. But yet I'm believing that God's still doing something. And the fact that I can openly talk about my faith and they'll ask for prayer, I think is massive. And it's obviously a journey. So, I guess we don't be discouraged, do we, when it doesn't happen straight away?
I think it's exactly that. Don't be discouraged, but the opposite. Find the courage in the opportunities we do have.
Yeah.
I remember we had a Vision Month in church, like we do every September. We've been doing it in September for the last 10 years, 11 years, something like that. And there was once a Vision Month that we did called I'm an Influence. And it was a kind of similar emphasis to some of the stuff we've been talking about in Scattered of actually what are we doing to be an influence in our world. And, the petrol station next door to church that burnt down, now rebuilt, but it's been there forever. And I remember we are in there often talking to people and buying our milk and whatever else. Getting as much food as you can for lunchtime, seeing what Dan Hoyle loves to see what deals you can get on lunchtime.
What's on offer.
Great deals. But obviously we meet the same staff, and there was a girl, and there was an opportunity that came up, and it was late on a Sunday night. I'd been preaching, I think, in Richmond and Barnard Castle, spent the whole day preaching about, hey, we should go and make a difference in our world. And then I walked up to the counter, and I was tired, a long day for preaching. I wasn't, being a bad witness, I don't think. I wasn't swearing, I wasn't smoking or drinking, but was just kind of tired. And an opportunity came up, and I can't remember what it was, and I almost walked away from the counter. I paid for my fuel, and I thought, God just kind of pressed on me, are you going to preach this, or are you going to live this?
Yeah.
And so I turned back round, and there was a girl behind the counter, and I can't remember how the conversation went, but I remember leaving, having invited her to church, thinking, okay, I've actually practiced what I preached.
Right.
Now, not all stories end like this, and we have to be faithful in the other opportunities, but eventually she did come to faith in Christ. That was 8-9 years ago. She's now part of our church in Richmond. She serves on a welcome team, storehouse team, and that is phenomenal. But I almost walked away, just paid for my fuel, and then left because I was tired. I've done church all day.
Wow.
But when we actually take the courage and go, no, there is something here, God is always faithful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Faith. So, and that's the whole thing we've been talking about, right, with Scattered.
Yeah.
All right, Ed, you preached in this series. Fantastic message, I'm sure. I was preaching somewhere else at the time.
And likewise, actually.
Yeah.
We need to catch up.
I'll get your podcast, you get mine.
It's on the podcast. Check it out.
Deal. Okay, but one of the things I did hear about your message was this line about staying with the chariot. Do you want to just kind of unpack that, and then we can chat about what it means?
Yeah, and I think just off the back of what you've just said there, it links in because it's kind of, you've got to see something through. Because, if you want to make it rhyme, because you never know what God will do. And it's like pushing through. And the whole idea with the staying close to the chariot, Acts 8:29, Philip, who's had a great time in Samaria, seen loads of lives change there, gets called to the desert, really in pursuit of, well, at that time, he's probably not sure, but he's staying faithful to God. And in the middle of the desert, there's one man appears on a chariot riding through, and God's command to him is just go to that chariot and stay near it. Wow. And because of his faithfulness, that man then ends up, I guess, becoming a Christian. It gives Philip a way in because he's close enough to the chariot from being obedient to God to hear what's going on there. And the guy's reading from Isaiah, and Philip interrupts him and says, do you actually understand what you're reading? And begins to share the message of Jesus to this bloke. And I think my encouragement, when it comes to sharing your faith with people is look at where you're positioned, whether that's geographically,
Right.
you know, if you're in Penrith, you're in Penrith. And sometimes we can be very guilty. We're looking, or not guilty, but guilty of looking around and thinking, well, does God want me somewhere else? Perhaps he's got this for me.
Yep.
Even look at the job that you're in, look at the people that surrounded you, look at your family, your neighbours, you know, the people living to your left and to your right, and actually be obedient to what God's
That's
called
good.
you to do.
That's
really good.
If he's positioned you there, it's for a reason. And, you know, when you hear Pastor Ben's story then, it's seeing it through, because you never know what God can do when we're just obedient to actually have the courage to, you know, one, to stay near the chariot, and then two, to approach the person on the chariot. And you never know when that opportunity is going to be, but we've got to be faithful in the process.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Really good. I think that's right about, like, not wishing away, that's not the right term, but the opportunity that you have now of, oh, if I had a better position, if I had a different job, if I had better neighbours, then I'd be a witness. And you know, maybe there's opportunities that we can hope for and aspire to, but if we're only ever thinking, well, when I get to, or when I'm like this, then I can do something. But like right now, every day, you know, the people you work with, the people that you live with, the people next door, there's not just opportunities on a bigger platform. It's like right now.
Yeah, and I guess what's really struck me about that story, because I think I heard you preach that, and I guess I didn't maybe hear this when you said it, but what I really heard when you were just saying there is, like, that doesn't sound glamorous at all. Like, you're in a desert with one person.
Right.
And that's what God had for Philip then. And, like, one soul is a huge deal. You know, like, heaven rejoices. And, yeah, we've got to be faithful to the assignment that God's given us, even if it doesn't look like we want it to look, or like we thought it would look, right?
Yeah, definitely.
That's
I
really
think
good.
for some people it maybe does feel like the desert season. You know, and even when it comes to evangelism, or, you know, this scattered series, there'll be some people thinking, well, here we go again. You know, I've tried this before, it's not worked. I've tried this with so-and-so. I've been fired up, I've spoke to people, but you never know when that moment is just going to click with someone. And it's that obedience to actually be like, okay, this maybe feels like the desert, but God, I'm still positioned and expectant that there's water in the desert, there's fruit in the desert, there's healing in the desert.
That's really good. And I think it goes back to, there's that parable that Jesus teaches about the parable of the talents, the people that he's entrusted with stuff and what they're going to do with what he's entrusted to them. And to the ones who multiplied what he had entrusted to them, it says, well done, good and faithful servant. And there was a guy who did nothing with what he had. He just hid it away because he was too scared of what his master would do if he didn't multiply it. And he's the one who is called wicked and lazy. Now, really, he brought back to him exactly the same. So he hadn't lost anything. Like if he'd gambled everything, lost it, and then come back with nothing, you'd think, well, wicked and lazy. But he brought back exactly what he was given, but he missed his opportunity that he had to. But at the other ones, it says, well done, good and faithful servant. Not good, well done. I think we read it as well done, good and successful servant of, oh, look what you've done. You've seen this, you've seen this. But actually, God's not looking for our success, perhaps in the terms that you and I would. Like, I've witnessed my friends for 20 years. Oh, but nothing's happened. But you've been faithful for 20 years. You're faithful with the assignment, is what you said. That was brilliant. With what we've been entrusted now. Not what will happen next, because maybe in 5 years your assignment will look totally different. But if we haven't made the most of this opportunity with what God's entrusted, then... Brilliant. Well, I think that kind of leads to, the last question was taken out of Ephesians chapter 5.
Great.
And really summarises some of what we've just been saying. It says from verse 15, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise as wise. There's a great challenge for you, Ed. Not as unwise as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. So the Bible encourages that we have perhaps limited time. The days are evil. So what are we doing now? How do we make the most of every opportunity? Soph, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I think going back to what Amy's reaction at the start was of feeling like daunted. I think sometimes when you read that, you can think, I've got to make the most of every opportunity, and it can seem quite daunting. So what I think what we need to do is kind of just take it back to God, and each day just pray and just even say, God, help me to see the opportunities today, and not let it be something that overwhelms us, not let it be something that stresses us, but just say, God, won't you lead me and guide me today? Help me to see opportunities and therefore make the most of them. And start with that prayer, and then just like we've been saying, then it just be natural, just when you're with people, that it's not this big, huge thing, but you can just bring up church or God just naturally. So even just this week, I had the opportunity of getting to know the parents of one of Evie's, my daughter's school friends, and I just wanted the opportunity to get to know them a little bit more. So I said, why don't we get together for lunch? And then of course church came up because they were saying, what do you do? And then one of the parents was just really interested, and I said, okay, well when you walk past church, why don't you pop in and I'll show you around. And he's already taken me up on that opportunity and already been in. And sometimes it's just something that that was literally just a throwaway comment of just like, hey, why don't you feel free to come and check out church and see it, and who knows where that will go, but that was just a small opportunity that presented itself, so I made the most of that opportunity. I think it's just being natural and just asking God to lead us and guide us each day, not being daunted or overwhelmed by grabbing those opportunities, but just asking God for the eyes to see them.
That's good. What do you think, Ames?
Well, I think what really struck me about Sophie's answer is that she's intentionally gone to build relationship with one of Evie's school friends' mums. And I think, we read in the Bible that God cares most about how we love him and how we love others. And I think that he really honors that. And, through us loving others, spending time with them, investing in them, that conversation has come up between Soph and that mum. And I think when we're talking about faith and what we believe and, how we see the world, it's not sort of like a light, small talk topic, really, is it?
Sure.
And so I often find in terms of, making the most of every opportunity, before you get to that point where you often can talk to someone about church or about how you see the world or about your belief system, you have to have a relationship with them first. So I think something that in terms of making the most of every opportunity and what that means to me, like I recently moved workplaces and it's kind of felt like a million steps back because I don't have any relationships with people. I can't talk to them about who I am, and that's felt quite isolating at times, but I've just really pushed into investing in them. And now sort of maybe 3 or 4 months down the line, I actually feel like I'm starting to be able to say things to them that are more meaningful, talk about, what's going on in my family, or talking about, how I might feel about something. And that's the sort of, when you're on that territory, then you can start talking about bigger things and share with them about Jesus. And it comes from a place of relationship, and they actually want to hear you out because you've got a relationship with them and there's that mutual respect there. So I think that's really key.
I think it's that age-old thing. Let me get it right. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So if you're going to say something about, do you know about the difference that God has made in my life, or would you like me to pray for you about this, or eventually, would you like to come to church? They're not going to respond positively to any of those things if the rest of the time you've just been blanking them in the corridors and never, before you can invite, you have to have invested in that relationship. Because we genuinely care about people. We don't just invest in a relationship to then invite them to church. But obviously we understand, and that's what Scattered is all about, that there is purpose in every opportunity, that actually in those friendships, in those relationships where we already have investment, God's like, but when are you going to share something about me? But we can't do that fruitfully unless we've invested to then invite.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think what I love from those verses in Ephesians is, who Paul's talking to is a bunch of Christians in a very non-Christian setting.
True.
And he's trying to remind them, he's saying, don't live as unwise, live as wise. Don't be foolish, don't be fooled. Don't, in other words, and then he says, make the most of every opportunity. In other words, it's reminding ourselves that actually we've been called for a higher purpose than just trying to get through our day-to-day life as it is. There's actually purpose on our life, and some of that is to bring a difference to the kingdom of God by reaching out to other people. And and Paul says that the days are evil, and it's the same today, that it's a messed up world. And where you said there about people need to know we care, It's like, if we really believe all that we believe in the truth that we've been saved once and for all time, God's got a plan for our life. He's got purpose on our life. There's hope for the hopeless.
Yeah.
For the broken, they can be restored.
Yeah.
If we really believe that, we don't want to keep that to ourselves.
Yeah.
If it really is the truth,
Yeah.
the treasure stored up in admittedly messed up, broken jars of clay like us, it has to be displayed to the world, because that's how good God is. And there's a quote I was just reading before of this guy called Charles Peace, who, by the sound of it, wasn't a Christian. In fact, I think this was on the day of his execution.
Wow.
For murder and things. He didn't sound like a very great bloke, but
Not
he
a role model of yours.
no, more like the sort of person that Netflix will make a documentary about one day. But he's getting read some religious rites by a Christian minister, and he can see that the guy's reading it in a very, serious but boring kind of, mundane sort of way, I guess. I'm just having to do this. And he pops up and he basically says something to the effect of, sir, if I believed what you believed, I would, if England was covered in broken glass, I would travel the length and breadth, even on my hands and knees if I must, to try and save one soul from this eternity that you're speaking of. And it made me think, that is the passion that maybe we need to carry with us.
That's great.
So,
That's great. And I think the passion to do that is the urgency is what we need, rather than, not that we don't need passion, because we do, but if we think passion looks like, I'm going to jump on top of this desk and preach to everybody in my workplace so that one soul can get saved, then that's why we all sometimes have shied away from evangelism, because we're like, oh, well, I haven't got the guts to do that, or I haven't got if I had a microphone, if I had a platform. But if we take that passion and put it into at least the urgency of today, I might have an opportunity. Today, I might not stand on my desk in the middle of my office or in an NHS surgery where you're Emmy and preach to everybody, but okay, when I'm talking to this colleague, there might be a chance for me to say something about Jesus. There might be a chance. Like, it's always the good news. But if we're not sharing it, if we're just keeping it to ourselves, that's what that whole finders keepers thing I was talking about on Sunday was about, that it's not meant to be just kept with us. We have found the answer to, an eternity without Christ. We have found the answer to find peace in our daily lives, purpose in our daily lives, joy, security, all these things. And if we keep that to ourselves, then, like your friend the prisoner, it's a little bit selfish, and we've kind of missed the point.
Yeah, it's good.
Brilliant. All right. Well, let us hand over to you guys in your life groups, or when you are next discussing with your life groups. I'm going to give you a couple of questions to help unpack this. But let me encourage you, if you haven't heard or received any of the stuff through the Scattered series that we did in September, then it is all still available online for you. There was 3 messages that we preached in the series, live in Sunday services, myself, Gail, and Ed. And so you can podcast any of those. There was the video message that we brought on the Scattered Sending, the commissioning and communion service that we did. That's available on YouTube. And all 20 of the daily devotions that we did through the series are still available on the app or on the website. So grab those, because they will continue, I think, to be an encouragement into you, to help empower you in your faith to be able to make a difference in your world. But let me leave you these questions for your life group discussions, or for you at home to think about, and then you can discuss next time when you're connecting with some of your life group community. These are 2 questions. Number 1, what action points are you believing to put into practice from the Scattered series? Because if this was just a series you heard or read about or listened to, but you didn't act upon, then we've completely missed the point. So what are your action points to put into practice from this series? And question 2, there's a scripture that you will know really well, that we all know really well, because it's key to us as a church, where Jesus is talking about being the light of the world. And the second half of that verse, which is the application part, he says, in the same way, let your light shine before men, or let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. Another translation says, see your good works and praise your Father in heaven. So if we are called to put action into our good works, which is like we've been sharing about in our workplaces, in our friendships, if we're called to put into action these good works, how can we do that without it seeming like an agenda, without it seeming like, oh, I've been told I need to do this? How can we, in our daily lives, what opportunities can you have to act on those good works so that it can lead to others coming to know God. Have a fantastic rest of your life group. If you are gathered together watching, then we hope you have a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, wherever it is that you are gathered. If you're watching at home, you're going to connect with someone later, then make sure you do, because this is not just supposed to be something that we read and watch and listen to, but something that we act upon, that we can discuss and shape together, because we believe in doing life together. We believe that's such an important thing, and we believe in putting our faith into practice.
Yeah.
So bless you guys. Thanks very much.
See ya.
Bye.